In a world where the boundaries between reality and game mechanics had fused, society had transformed. Professions rooted in fantasy were now commonplace, and the discovery of ruins and secret realms had become an integral part of life. At a local academy, the excitement was palpable. A teacher, brimming with enthusiasm, addressed his class, urging them to prepare for the upcoming job transition ceremony. His voice resonated with excitement, fueling the energy in the room as students eagerly gathered their belongings, ready to experience a life-changing event. However, in stark contrast to the lively atmosphere, one student sat silently at the back of the classroom. His name was Lu Fan, and his demeanor stood out among the buzzing energy. While his classmates clamored to leave, he remained seated, his face etched with unease. Noticing this, the teacher approached him, concern flickering in his eyes. "Lu Fan, what's wrong? You're the top student in this class, you have nothing to worry about," the teacher reassured him. But Lu Fan appeared distracted, his gaze unfocused as if he were seeing something no one else could. Suddenly, a translucent screen materialized before his eyes, displaying vibrant text. "Congratulations! The Super Treasure Map system has been successfully activated." For a moment, Lu Fan was stunned, unable to process what had just occurred. The appearance of this mysterious system left him speechless. Before he could dwell on it further, the teacher's voice snapped him back to reality. "Lu Fan! Are you even listening to me?" the teacher barked, his patience wearing thin. Startled, Lu Fan quickly apologized, scrambling out of his seat. "I'm going now." "Sorry, sir," he blurted, hastily making his way out of the classroom. As he descended the stairs, his thoughts raced. A system? His mind whirled with questions. He muttered under his breath, "There's no way I could survive in a world like this without one." Despite his curiosity about its purpose, he decided to push those thoughts aside for now. Reaching the bottom of the staircase, Lu Fan steadied himself. First things first, he resolved. The job transition ceremony awaited, and it was too important to miss. Outside the academy building, a large crowd of students had already gathered. They stood before an elevated stage, where a dazzling object drew their attention, a massive crystalline structure that radiated an ethereal glow. "Is that the job transition crystal?" one student whispered, eyes wide with amazement. "I've never seen one before." "Same here," another added nervously, shifting their weight from one foot to the other. The murmurs grew louder until a commanding voice from the stage boomed across the courtyard. "Quiet," the speaker ordered, silencing the chatter instantly. All eyes turned to the stage, where the ceremony was about to begin, the anticipation in the air thick enough to cut with a blade. As Lu Fan navigated through the dense crowd, snippets of conversation buzzed around him. He passed by a student animatedly sharing his aspirations. "It'd be incredible if I awakened as a hidden combat professional," the student said, his voice brimming with excitement. "Imagine being powerful, admired by thousands." However, his companion wasn't so optimistic. With a scoff, he replied, "Stop dreaming. Hidden combat professionals? In our school? You've got better odds of winning the lottery." He snorted and added with a smirk, "If I end up with a life profession, I'll be begging my ancestors for mercy." Up on the stage, an elderly man stepped forward, his commanding presence drawing the crowd's attention. "Students, the job transition ceremony is about to begin," he announced, his voice clear and authoritative. "Joining me today is the priest who will oversee this year's transitions." The announcement sparked a wave of whispers among the students. They gazed at the priest with awe and curiosity. "That's the professional who manages job transitions?" someone murmured. "Look at his aura," another marveled. "It's so strong. Imagine awakening with an aura like that." While others were lost in admiration, Lu Fan quietly observed the priest. Even from a distance, he could sense the imposing presence of a true combat professional. His thoughts, however, were interrupted by a sudden notification from his system. "New skill acquired, Eye of Appraisal." The unexpected message left Lu Fan momentarily stunned. "Eye of Appraisal," he muttered. Without hesitation, he activated the skill. A translucent interface appeared before him, displaying a glowing icon hovering over the priest. With growing curiosity, Lu Fan tapped on it, and a detailed profile of the priest materialized in front of him. "So, this skill lets me see a person's stats and attributes," Lu Fan thought, his nerves easing slightly as he realized the utility of his newfound ability. Meanwhile, the student's attention shifted to a particular individual in the crowd. Tall, confident, and exuding natural charisma, he stood out among his peers. "That guy must have insane attributes," one student commented enviously. "Look at the way he carries himself. He's a shoo-in for a combat profession." "I heard job transitions are mostly random," another replied. "But yeah, better stats do increase the chances. And he's not just strong, he's ridiculously handsome." Cheers and whispers filled the air as the priest began the ceremony. With practiced ease, the priest raised his hands, invoking his skills. The crowd fell silent as the glowing job transition crystal at the center of the stage began to radiate a mesmerizing light. The tall student stepped forward, his face brimming with confidence as the priest focused his energy on him. The crystal's glow intensified, bathing the stage in its ethereal light, signaling that the transition process had begun. Every pair of eyes was fixed on the stage, anticipation and envy thick in the air. The job transition crystal suddenly flared with a brilliant light, producing a massive, swirling ball of fire that crackled with intense heat. Gasps and murmurs swept through the crowd as students stared in awe. "He's a mage," someone exclaimed, pointing at the glowing sphere. "Not just any mage, he can cast fireballs." "Zhang Tao really became a combat professional," another shouted, their voice tinged with both envy and admiration. The name Zhang Tao echoed through the crowd as the newly transitioned student stepped forward with a smug smile. Raising his hand, he conjured a small, blazing fireball that hovered above his palm. The students erupted into cheers and whispers. "Zhang Tao is incredible. He's destined for greatness," one student gushed. "Yeah, his future is as bright as that fireball," another agreed. "If I were him, I wouldn't let anyone get near me. I'd totally cling to his leg," someone joked, causing laughter among the group. Meanwhile, Lu Fan stood silently, his gaze fixed on the stage. Awe mixed with a hint of anxiety flickered in his eyes. Once someone becomes a combat professional, they can leave behind the mundane life of an ordinary person, he murmured to himself, marveling at the transformation. The elder on stage, however, was far from pleased. His stern expression deepened as he slammed his staff against the ground. "Enough," he barked, his voice cutting through the commotion. "Quiet down and let's continue the ceremony." Reluctantly, the students fell silent as the next candidates were called up. One by one, they stepped forward to face the crystal, their fates unfolding before their peers. A young man approached and completed his transition, a soft green glow surrounding him. "I'm a herbalist," he declared, his voice filled with pride. "I'll carry on my family's legacy." The next participant, a bulky, muscular student, wasn't as lucky. "A tailor," he grumbled, his voice laced with frustration. "This can't be right. I don't even like sewing." A thin, nervous student followed. As the crystal completed his transition, his face fell. "A miner," he stammered, trembling. I don't want this." Standing on the sidelines, Lu Fan observed the proceedings, his thoughts racing. "So, combat professions really are rare," he mused, his expression thoughtful. "Most people end up with life professions instead. It's clear that awakening as a combat professional opens the door to limitless opportunities." He turned his gaze back to the crowd, noting the stark contrast between the students. Those who had transitioned into combat roles were radiant with joy, basking in the admiration of their peers. In stark contrast, those who awakened life professions wore expressions of disappointment, their shoulders slumped under the weight of dashed hopes. For them, Lu Fan thought, awakening as a life professional often means resigning to a life of mediocrity. As his mind lingered on this harsh reality, a voice interrupted his thoughts. The student in front of him turned around and, with a faint smile, said, "Even so, it's still not the worst outcome." The comment caught Lu Fan off guard, leaving him momentarily speechless. The boy sighed and leaned closer to Lu Fan, muttering, "Did you hear about Li Ping from Class 3? His family's already struggling to make ends meet, and he got stuck with the most expensive enhancement profession. It's practically worse than a life profession. At least life professions come with a usable skill." Lu Fan's gaze instinctively shifted toward a boy standing off to the side, his shoulders slouched and his face clouded with despair. Li Ping, the student in question, seemed overwhelmed by the weight of his newfound burden. A cold chill ran down Lu Fan's spine as he glanced back at the stage. His own family's financial situation wasn't great either, and he couldn't shake the unsettling thought of what might happen if he ended up in a similar position. Before he could dwell on it further, the sound of his name being called snapped him out of his thoughts. "Lu Fan," the elder bellowed, his voice echoing across the courtyard. Startled, Lu Fan raised his hand hastily. "Here. I'm here," he called back, his voice slightly shaky. Taking a deep breath, he made his way toward the stage. As he climbed the steps, scattered whispers followed him. "Hey, isn't he kind of handsome?" a female student murmured, nudging her friend. "I wonder what profession he'll get." Reaching the center of the stage, Lu Fan found himself standing before the glowing job transition crystal. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. No point in being nervous now, he told himself. Whatever happens, happens. The priest began chanting, his voice low and resonant as he activated his skills. Energy swirled around the crystal, and its glow intensified. Lu Fan watched intently as the crystal came alive, radiating a powerful light. Suddenly, an eerie image appeared within its depths, a single, piercing dragon's eye that seemed to look directly at him. The ground beneath the stage began to rumble, causing gasps of alarm to ripple through the crowd. "What's going on? Is this an earthquake?" a student shouted, gripping their friend's arm for balance. Before anyone could answer, a brilliant beam of light shot down from the heavens, enveloping Lu Fan in its radiant glow. The students shielded their eyes, squinting against the brightness. As the light faded, an enormous dragon materialized behind Lu Fan, its scales glistening like molten gold and its presence utterly commanding. "Look," someone exclaimed. "Lu Fan's job transition summoned a dragon." "That's insane," another student added, their voice trembling with excitement. "This kind of phenomenon only happens with hidden professions." "Wait, a hidden profession? Are you serious?" someone else asked, eyes wide with disbelief. Meanwhile, a female teacher standing at the edge of the courtyard hurriedly pulled out her communicator and called Mr. Lee, Lu Fan's homeroom teacher. "Mr. Lee, your class has produced the school's first hidden profession. Can you believe it?" Mr. Lee's voice crackled over the line, filled with awe and speculation. If that's true, and Lu Fan transitions into one of the strongest hidden professions, like a dragon blood warrior or a dragon language mage, he could become a pivotal figure in the Dragon Kingdom's history. He might even rival the legends. The dragon hovering above Lu Fan roared thunderously, its voice shaking the air and sending waves of awe through the gathered students. "It's been 10 years since someone became a dragon blood warrior," Mr. Lee continued, his tone reverent. "And that person is now the Dragon Kingdom's greatest expert," the female teacher added, her eyes shining with anticipation as she gazed at Lu Fan. Could he be next? On the stage, Lu Fan stood motionless, the dragon's presence behind him casting a shadow over the awestruck crowd. Mr. Lee and the gathered crowd held their breath as all eyes fixated on Lu Fan, waiting to see what profession would emerge from such a spectacular display. Meanwhile, the massive dragon in the air let out a deafening roar that shook the earth. Without warning, it swooped down toward Lu Fan in a blur of golden scales, its dive triggering an explosion of light and force that sent shockwaves rippling across the stage. Students screamed in alarm, their hands shielding their faces from the blinding light. On stage, Lu Fan flinched instinctively, throwing his arms up to protect himself from the impact. The dragon's immense presence seemed to overwhelm the area, leaving many frozen in awe and fear. The priest and the elder, alarmed by the chaos, rushed toward Lu Fan. The elder reached him first, gripping his arm firmly. "Quickly! What's your profession?" he demanded, his voice sharp with urgency. "Are you a dragon blood warrior? Or perhaps a dragon language mage?" Lu Fan hesitated, his face pale as he avoided the elder's piercing gaze. Taking a deep breath, he bit his lip before muttering, I'm a dragon tamer." For a moment, there was silence. Then, the elder's expression twisted in disbelief, and Mr. Lee's brows furrowed deeply. "A dragon tamer?" the elder repeated, his voice rising with incredulity. "After all that spectacle? That grand scene? And you ended up as a dragon tamer?" The disappointment in his tone was unmistakable. He shook his head, muttering bitterly, "Of all the hidden professions, why the most useless one?" His words cut like a blade, leaving Lu Fan standing there, shoulders slumped under the weight of their expectations. After the job transition ceremony concluded, Lu Fan wandered the streets of Zhong City, his footsteps slow and aimless. The Old Town district stretched before him, its narrow alleys bustling with life, but he barely noticed the activity around him. His focus was entirely on the glowing screen hovering before him, the system interface only he could see. His eyes scanned the information displayed, his mind replaying the events of the ceremony. The weight of the elder's disappointment and the murmurs of the students echoed in his ears. "You're destined for mediocrity," one student had said, their words biting as they dismissed him. "Humans can't possibly tame creatures as powerful as dragons." Another had nodded in agreement. "Sure, it's a hidden class," they had sneered, "but it's the weakest one in terms of actual strength. What's the point of a title if it can't deliver results?" Lu Fan sighed deeply, the memory stinging like a fresh wound. His gaze hardened as he stared at the system screen. Though the doubts of others weighed on him, a flicker of resolve sparked in his eyes. If the system chose him as a dragon tamer, there had to be a reason. He just needed to figure it out. When one of the students overheard the conversation about dragon tamers being considered the weakest, he turned to the person next to him for confirmation. "Isn't dragon tamer still classified as one of the 3 major hidden professions, alongside dragon blood warrior and dragon language mage?" he asked skeptically. The other student nodded but added with a smirk, "It is, technically. But what's the point? Nobody can even find dragons, let alone tame them. Honestly, it'd be better to choose something like a summoner. At least they can call for creatures that actually show up." Meanwhile, the elder on stage, recovering from his initial shock, attempted to console Lu Fan. Patting his shoulder, he offered a thin smile. "Well, at least you've awakened a hidden class," he said. "Dragon tamers have limitless potential. Who knows? Maybe you'll manage to tame some lesser dragons and still achieve great power." Lu Fan's expression remained grim. Shaking his head, he replied bitterly, "Limitless potential? A dragon tamer without a dragon is nothing but a joke. And even if I somehow found lesser dragons, they're just ferocious beasts. They could never compare to real dragons." His voice dropped as he continued, "In the entire 800-year history of the Dragon Kingdom, there have been sightings of dragons, but not once has there been a dragon tamer who actually tamed one. Even the strongest humans are like ants before the might of a true dragon. Trying to tame one? It's an impossible dream, nothing more." Lu Fan sighed, his gaze falling to the hidden system interface floating before him. Swiping at the screen, he muttered to himself, "Without a dragon tamer can't unlock skills, let alone grow stronger. What's the point of potential if it's locked behind something unattainable?" His shoulders slumped further as thoughts of his aunt weighed heavily on him. She had sacrificed so much, working tirelessly to ensure he could attend school. Yet now, with this so-called hidden profession, he felt powerless to give her the better life she deserved. Lost in his thoughts, Lu Fan hardly noticed his surroundings until he arrived at a familiar street. The scent of freshly steamed buns wafted through the air, bringing him back to reality. Glancing up at the sign, he realized he'd unconsciously walked home. Taking a deep breath, Lu Fan straightened himself and forced a smile onto his face. Pushing open the door to the modest bun shop, he called out cheerfully, "Auntie, I'm home." Inside, his aunt, Han Ki, was busy arranging a tray of piping hot buns. She looked up at the sound of his voice, her face lighting up with joy. "Lu Fan, you're back," she exclaimed warmly. The aroma of the meal she had prepared filled the room as she motioned for him to sit. Despite the heaviness in his heart, Lu Fan's smile widened, knowing he couldn't let his worries dampen her happiness. For now, he would set aside his doubts and cherish this moment of comfort and familiarity. Lu Fan was caught off guard when Han Ki greeted him with an enthusiastic hug, her joy evident in her voice as she exclaimed, "You're back." Before he could respond, she clasped his arm and eagerly led him to the dining table. Her smile was radiant as she said, "Today was your big day. Your job transition must have gone well." As they sat down, Han Ki leaned forward with anticipation. "So? What profession did you awaken?" she asked. Lu Fan hesitated, his shoulders drooping as he struggled to form an answer. His expression turned somber, and Han Ki noticed immediately. Concern flickered in her eyes, but she quickly spoke up to reassure him. "It's okay, you know. Even if you didn't awaken as a combat professional, that's fine by me. I'd just worry if you were out there fighting dangerous battles every day." Before she could finish, Lu Fan cut her off with a quiet, "No, it's not that." His words faltered as he confessed, I awakened as a dragon tamer." His gaze dropped to the table, unable to meet hers. "But it's a profession that's practically useless without a dragon." To his surprise, Han Ki didn't react with shock or disappointment. Instead, she broke into a warm, genuine smile. Rising from her seat, she walked over and hugged him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. "A dragon tamer? That's wonderful," she said brightly. "It means you're incredibly strong, even if you don't see it yet." Her voice was steady, filled with unshakable confidence. "No matter what, I'll support you. If you decide to pursue college, I'll do everything I can to help you succeed. And if you don't want to, you can stay here and run the bun shop with me." Lu Fan felt his chest tighten with emotion. Her unwavering support and kind words filled him with gratitude. A small smile tugged at his lips as he said softly, "Thank you, Auntie." Han Ki clapped her hands together cheerfully and said, "Enough worrying for now. Let's eat." She gestured to the feast she had prepared. Lu Fan's eyes widened as he took in the sheer amount of food. This is way too much. How am I supposed to finish all this?" Not long after, Lu Fan found himself back in his small room, lying face first on his bed. As he stared at the ceiling, his thoughts drifted to Han Ki. Her hard-working hands flashed in his memory, and he sighed deeply. "She's only 26, he muttered to himself. Despite pouring years of effort into her life profession, she's still stuck living an ordinary life. She deserves so much better. Lu Fan's resolve grew as he stared at the system interface hovering faintly in his peripheral vision. For her sake, and his own, he would find a way to make his seemingly useless profession matter. Determined to change his fate, Lu Fan clenched his fists, staring at the ceiling with frustration. "I can't just accept this," he muttered, his voice trembling with emotion. "Being a dragon tamer, it's supposed to be a real hidden profession, but only if I can actually find a dragon." His frustration boiled over, and he slammed his fist against the mattress. I refuse to live like this. There has to be a way. As his thoughts spiraled, something unexpected caught his attention. A soft chime echoed in his mind, and the system's interface appeared before him. Congratulations! You've unlocked your first feature. A treasure map has been sent. Lu Fan's eyes widened in disbelief. A god-tier treasure map? On the very first day, he muttered, his voice filled with surprise. The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. Of course. The system is called the Super Treasure Map System. That's what it said when it activated. Excitement surged through him as he opened the chest that had materialized alongside the notification. He paused, recalling how he'd only tested the system's appraisal function earlier that day and hadn't explored its true potential. The system's voice chimed in again, providing an explanation. Treasure maps are divided into 4 levels: beginner, intermediate, advanced, and god tier. 3 identical lower-level maps can be combined into one higher-level map. Additionally, you will receive a treasure map every day, each corresponding to a randomly assigned level and location tied to your profession. Lu Fan read the explanation intently, his mind racing. Treasures tied to his profession? Could this be the key to unlocking the potential of a dragon tamer? When he clicked on the chest, a map appeared, displaying a marked location. A notification informed him. Today's treasure map, God tier. Location, stone plains near the mountain range. Danger level, 10. Lu Fan studied the map closely, his fingers tracing the outline of the area. The stone plains, it's not that far from Zhonghai City. If I catch the last suburban bus tonight, I can get there by dawn. Resolve flashed in his eyes as he closed the system screen. He stood up, a new determination swelling within him. If I give up now, I'll spend my whole life struggling at the bottom of society. I won't even be able to repay Auntie Han Ki for everything she's done for me. I can't let that happen. With his mind set, Lu Fan quickly began preparing for his journey, ready to embrace whatever challenges awaited him on the stone plains. This was his chance to prove that being a dragon tamer wasn't a curse, but a hidden blessing waiting to be uncovered. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.